Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to another video here, another throwback here, as I'm trying to kind of go a little bit further back than some of my more recent entries that I've made, especially getting back to some from the 80s or even earlier, such as some of those Hammer and AIP films, so be sure to stay tuned for those. For this entry, it was kind of strange how this one even came back to mind after all these years, but recently I revisited IMadman from 1989, from the same director who I believe brought us The Gate not long before, which is an excellent introduction to horror for the younglings out there. But this film stars Jenny Wright, who was also in a film I recently made a video for, Near Dark, which I will link to at the end of this video, that had come out a few years earlier. And Clayton Rohner, who has actually been in a few of my previous videos, such as Modern Girls, April Fool's Day, and Just One of the Guys. A very early video of mine for a film which holds up surprisingly well. But as for this film and what it's about, the synopsis is as follows. A bookshop clerk and wannabe actress starts seeing the disfigured killer from her 1950s pulp novels come to life and start killing people around her. She tries to convince her cop boyfriend, but to no avail. So this was kind of a cool idea, in that our lead is reading these books, and one of these horror titles, eventually IMadman, really has some gruesome stuff going on in there, such as this main character cutting off features of his own face, then cutting them off of others and kind of putting them on himself, replacing it. Really gross stuff. But while there is some concern that she's becoming so obsessed with these books by, such as her boyfriend, IMadman in particular, the real issue is when she's seemingly hallucinating a bit, at least that's how it kind of first presents itself, as it seems that she's seeing acts and plot points from these books kind of happening in the real world. As the synopsis says, she is a clerk at a bookshop while also trying to get work as an actress. And at this bookshop, they have a shipment of an estate sale. Lots to go through, particularly books, I think over 1,000 different titles. But the estate sale turns out to be from the author of some of these books that she's been reading. So reality and imagination from reading these books are overlapping as she's seeing these situations now happening in her real life, such as somebody she knows from her acting class being found killed by similar methods as what she was reading about in the book, to the point where she's just outright seeing this madman kind of coming in and out of her view. Her policeman boyfriend, of course, is understandably concerned, and as well as being very skeptical as well, as because as she's reading, things are starting to get worse for her. Now, the basic question is, how does one get out of a situation like this? This is a really interesting little mystery, which is only about maybe 95 minutes long, and is currently available on Tubi, more on that a little bit later, as well as Amazon Prime, MGM Plus, and Philo, yet for some reason I don't see this available on paid rental, which is odd. But if it sounds interesting, this idea of mixing what this story is, what she's reading, which we get to see her in the storyline of the book, and then snapping back to what was current day at the time, and then seeing these characters from the books kind of starting to appear in real life, this weird idea of, is she even losing her mind? Is this really happening? Crazy stuff, cool mystery. So like I said, if it sounds interesting, head on over to Tubi, I would recommend to go and check it out, because it does hold up after all these decades, even with some very outdated effects towards the end. So, now for a bit more info, which might have a little bit of the spoilery kind of stuff in it. Let's talk about those effects, particularly when it comes to this Jackal Boy thing. Of course, at the time, CG was not an option for a film like this. I think we only had some CG character in that young Sherlock Holmes movie, might have been like the first one. But this didn't have the budget for it. It wasn't a major blockbuster kind of release. It was only a small release with a small budget of about $3 million, which of course these days any smaller indie horror filmmakers would kill to even have that, even in $26. But it wasn't a big film. But the effects that they did achieve with this stop motion, almost like a Harryhausen style animation and projection, to both bring that creature to life in general and to get it to move, as well as how to bring it onto the screen so it feels like it's actually a part of the scenery and everything, really worked out pretty well. Now there are, of course, times where, it's by today's standards, it doesn't really hold up as well, but I would just say overall, even though stop motion can get a bit wonky at times, overall I felt like it gets a point across for what's happening in the scene, makes for some really interesting shots, especially when it comes to that Jackal Boy in this film, getting cut in half in that window frame like in a guillotine style. One of the only things I'd actually even remembered from this film. It had just stuck in my brain for years. When it gets thrown through, comes down like a guillotine, and it's walking around on its 2 hands and everything. Everything else about the film had kind of faded away over the years. Now, as for why it was fading, not because of any reason other than it's just a good film. It's not a great film. It's good. It's definitely worth watching, but it wasn't very popular. So I'd seen it a few times, enjoyed it, but down the line, it was just not as, popular enough that, like, I didn't come across it when I was out collecting Laserdiscs and later on DVD and then Blu-ray. I'd kind of just forgotten about the film. But then this past weekend, I had a friend over to check out some movies, and she brought up one film that she was interested in. We found it over on Tubi. Since it was also a horror film, it recommended IMadman. I hadn't even thought about the movie in years, and I added it to my queue to go ahead and check it out. And Tubi is definitely a strange platform because, for those who aren't familiar, it's a free platform, which is basically just ad-supported content. You can make a profile to sign in if you want to track what you're watching and get recommendations, but for the most part, it's just free, and their ad breaks really aren't that intrusive, usually only lasting about a minute and a half or so. And I frequently have come across both some surprising new titles that I'm surprised that they actually got on the service, to some old ones that I've completely forgotten, such as IMadman. So to wrap up this quick video here, I will say that this late 80s throwback has aged pretty well. It's a good movie. Not great, but good. We have an interesting mystery around these books, who the author was, the actions from the books bleeding into real life, with some cool ideas about just who this killer is, why he does what he does. It works well, it's quick, and is more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out my latest quick video here for IMadman from 1989, which at the time of this video, again, it's on Tubi, which is why I would recommend checking it out. But it's also, I hear, on Amazon Prime from what Just Watch says. Worth the watch, in my opinion. And before we go, sound off in the comments. Have you seen this one? Do you remember it? Did you see it back in the day? And have you revisited it anytime soon to see if your opinions changed on it? If you enjoyed it, because it is dated in some ways, but still fun for the most part. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. Thanks for coming by and for sticking around to the end. I will link to a video for Near Dark in just a moment, and I will also put one up for one of those Clayton Rohner films that I'd covered as well. Also, if you enjoy, please give me a thumbs up, and if not already subscribed, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.